What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the brother Aram for the donation to the channel via the PayPal. Much respect to him for showing love once again to Too Raw for TV. All right, so this is a question that one of my subscribers asked me, and that was they wanted me to, I guess, give my opinion of the three most shocking or surprising or maybe unexpected NBA championships of all time, or at least those that I can recall. And the first one that comes to mind, as far as shocking NBA championships, would be the 2004 Detroit Pistons. Going into that finals, they were going up against a team that, of course, had four Hall of Famers in their starting lineup, or future Hall of Famers: Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, and Gary Payton. That's quite a formidable team, right? And while, of course, Karl Malone was not in his prime and Gary Payton was getting out of his prime years right around that time period, that was still a really good team talent-wise. I mean, they were able to get to the NBA Finals despite injuries to Karl Malone, which limited him to, I think, just 41 games or so during the regular season. Shaq was, I think, coming off of what was it? He had a foot, I think he had a toe injury that eventually required surgery. I forget some of the details, but they were a bit banged up. But still, most people pretty much were of the opinion that they were going to make mincemeat of this Detroit Pistons team. There's too much offensive firepower. I remember thinking that, well, I think the Pistons will get a game. That was my thinking at the time. Well, it would actually be the Lakers that would just get one game, and that was courtesy really of Kobe hitting a game-time three-pointer, which sent the game in overtime and they were able to win. But other than that, that was a complete domination by the Detroit Pistons. 4-1. Chauncey Billups was Finals MVP. The great Kobe Bryant was held to, if I remember my numbers correctly, he was held to 38% shooting from the floor and just 17% from downtown by Tayshaun Prince. Did a remarkable defensive job on Kobe Bryant. It wasn't just him; others helped out as well, but primarily he was the one guarding him. And they were one of the great defensive teams of all time. I could make an argument that this Pistons team was the greatest defensive team ever. Ben Wallace set an NBA record for most defensive win shares in the season that year. He was the engine that, he was the defensive anchor, and he was the engine that made that team run. It was because of his presence, his influence, that players who were not noted for defense at the time, Tayshaun Prince, one of them, became one of the league's better defensive players. Even Rasheed Wallace was playing defense. And it took an alpha like Ben Wallace to sort of get Rasheed Wallace on the same page. And while they were unable to repeat the next year, this is one of the most surprising NBA championships of all time. The other two, as far as surprising championships, I would have to concur with the person who brought this up as a topic. I would say the 1975 Golden State Warriors are another one. That team was led by Rick Barry. Rick Barry did a lot of heavy lifting for that particular team. I think Rick Barry at the time was 31 years old. He was arguably the best overall player in the NBA at that time. Of course, Kareem was the most dominant player, but overall, you could make an argument, at least that year, Rick Barry was the best player in the NBA. He could score. He could play defense. He was a terror as far as in the passing lanes with steals. I believe he led the league in steals that year, if I'm not mistaken, in the NBA. He was an underrated facilitator. He was a much improved decision maker with the basketball, a much improved ball handler. Playing in the ABA against their superior guard depth, actually, it even improved Rick Barry's conditioning from when he first came to the NBA, which was never a problem anyway. But he was just a terror, man. And Rick Barry is one of the few players in the history of the NBA to average over 30 points per game in a season and win a championship. As a matter of fact, the only help that he had from an offensive standpoint was a rookie, Jamal Wilkes. And that's almost it. That's almost it, man. You know, he didn't really have much help. And they went up against a juggernaut of a Bullets team. Now, of course, the Bullets will win the championship 3 years later, but that Bullets team was better. That Bullet team won 60 games, which was a lot of wins back in the 70s. It was Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes Moore in their prime years. And they were supposed to win that final. So for them to get swept by the 48-34 Golden State Warriors was one of the big shocks in the history of the NBA at that time and since. You know what I mean? Like it was almost like a coronation. It was expected that they were going to win the championship that year, the Bullets, but that didn't happen. So, I'm trying to think, there's somebody else on that team. I think there was a rookie that wound up being a good scorer. Phil Smith. So all you had on that team were two rookie guys, other than Rick Barry, who could score the basketball. So he did a lot of heavy lifting. The other team just came 2 years later. That would be the 1977 Trailblazers. Bill Walton and those guys. From a talent perspective, they couldn't hold a candle to the Sixers. I mean, the 1977 Sixers were loaded when it came to talent. Aside from Dr. J, you had George McInnes. Now, you could kind of make an argument that George McInnes was not a good fit playing with Dr. J, but still, when it comes to talent, that team went 50-32. But you had, look at the team right now. You had Julius Erving, who averaged 21.6 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.9 steals, 1.4 blocks. Doug Collins, you know what I'm saying, averaging 18 points a game, along with almost 5 assists per game. George McInnes, 21 points, 11.5 rebounds, 4 assists. Henry Bibby, 10 points, almost over 4 assists. Worldby Free, who was not getting that many minutes, but still was somehow able to average 16 points a game on just 29 minutes of play. So, you know, you had a really deep team. Darryl Dawkins, of course, Joe Jellybean Bryant, the father of Kobe Bryant. Harvey Catchings was on this team. So Steve Mix, Caldwell Jones, Fred Carter. So this is a deep team, man, compared to the Portland Trailblazers. But Portland had a superior coach, a superior coaching staff. If I remember correctly, on that Portland Trailblazers team, not only was Dr. Jack Ramsey the head coach, but I also believe that was an assistant coach for them. What's his name? Jack McKinney. So Jack McKinney, of course, was the coach of the Showtime Lakers. He's the one that helped implement the Showtime strategy and philosophy. If I remember correctly, he was an assistant coach with Jack Ramsey on those 77 Portland Trailblazers teams. So they were very well coached. Not to knock Gene Shue, but, the advantage in coaching went to the Portland Trailblazers. That's when coaches had more influence and players listened to coaches back then. It was still more of a coaches' league, but and the Portland Trailblazers dropped the first two games of that finals, but they went on to win 4 games in a row. Matter of fact, I believe they're the first team. To drop the first 2 games of the finals and then go on to win 4 straight. But don't quote me on that. Their overall team-oriented style was able to overcome the superior ISO play of the Philadelphia 76ers. And they won the first, and to this date only, championship for that franchise. And it wasn't for Bill Walton's injury 60 games into the next season, Portland probably would have repeated as champions. They went 58-24 during the next season. I think the year they won the championship was like 49-33. They went 58-24 the next year, but they finished the season 8-14 after Walton's injury. So when he got hurt, they were 50-10. So they were going to probably win 65, 67, 68 games. So anyway, those are my 3 teams as far as the top 3 most surprising or unexpected championships in NBA history. Tell me what you guys think.